full of outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.
I have to look back at that before we start, because I think I was just having like a little bounce to the music as it came on. Good evening and welcome to tonight's Education Tonight with myself, Adam Spence, and Hannah Wilson. We're just saying very quickly before we came on that we're right at the end of the year, aren't we? Everyone's feeling really tired. And you say you got to kind of pluck up the courage for a school trip tomorrow, Hannah?
Yeah. Taking, I think, 60 kids to an arts museum, so it'll be good.
Yeah, wow. So this week it was actually Thank a Teacher Day earlier on in the week, and we thought we'd just kind of, spend a few minutes just saying thank you to our teachers, because we like to share here on Teachers Talk Radio. You want to go first, Hannah?
I think like the most memorable teacher for me was Major Bartlett, who was my swim coach, and I was on the swim team at school. And I started swimming because I was asthmatic and couldn't swim very much, but actually he trained us really well, really hard. And he was quite funny because if other people tried to join the swim team and swap from one of the other sports, he did the hardest session possible, so nobody ever came back. So it was a really lovely select group, and as soon as everyone had gone who wasn't serious, we were allowed to play water polo and have fun. So a great balance, but yeah, definitely remember him.
Yeah, well, I had a guy called Mr. Hudson. I remember him. He came to our school from Sheffield. And at the time, it's mid-90s, and kind of the music was all a big thing with us at the time, kind of Pulp, Oasis, Blur, and all that. And I never know if this was true or not, but he said that he managed Pulp earlier on in his career. Looking back, probably a complete lie to kind of get us all in, because the ages don't work or anything. But my God, I was completely kind of sucked in then to everything he was talking about, and I thought that's kind of what I wanted to do at the time. I thought I wanted to be in the music industry. I wanted to be hanging around with these guys, and I think maybe it's just one of those things that he did to kind of get me in. Kind of, from that point, that was business studies at year 10, and I've carried on. I'm still a business studies teacher now in 2024. But yeah, it's funny how those moments of spark of inspiration can really kind of draw you in. So a big thank you to everybody that has been or is a teacher. Obviously, Teachers Talk Radio is here to celebrate you. And thank you for tuning in tonight. We just want to say a quick hello to our sponsors before we get on with tonight's show. We always say hello, John. To John Catt. As you can see, you can visit johncattbookshop.com and use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. We're also supported by Teaching Show Shows S, who and you can see their website there, how2s.com. The platform features over 160 visual evidence based guides of teaching techniques. Register for their next seminar. You can go to their website for that. It's just there again. Teaching How To's is their kind of a company name. So thank you very much for their sponsors tonight. We're also supported by Apps for You. So you can visit www.appsforyou.org. Free introductory computer courses for everybody, mapped for the UK computing curriculums. As a previous computing teacher, they're fantastic. And Easy for You, www.easyforyou.school. Embrace technology and equip your school with cutting edge devices and to revolutionize the learning in the school. So thank you very much for all the sponsors for supporting tonight's show. You can also apply to be a host if you wish to, and you can visit the Teachers Talk Radio. I'll say it slowly. Team, our website to look at that. So the main second part of today's show is going to be speaking to Dr. Sanjeev Nikani at OBE, and we'll be looking at whether or not the phone has stolen play-based childhood and what is the impact on our students' mental health, speech and language development. So we've got Dr. Nichani coming on from about 8:30 this evening. But last week, Hannah, we started to look through some of the manifestos, and we focused on kind of Labour and Conservative a little bit with Freddie Whitaker from Schools Week. And I just want to, if I can, just play the clip from Bridget Phillipson, and then we've got Karan Bales, who's going to, help us digest kind of this week's news on that. So we can just listen to Bridget Phillipson from the Labour
age in an era where I saw the practical difference that government could make in people's lives, and that's always shaped my politics. We do need to get to a fairer society. That was what I feel we achieved last time around, and tackling child poverty in particular is a driving force for me. It's where we made major progress last time around, and where, whatever changes we might want to make in education, the single biggest way that we can provide more opportunities for children and actually could make the job of teachers and schools easier would be to bear down on the numbers of children living in poverty at the moment.
All right, brilliant. Good evening, Karam, are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. We're busy day at school today, but I've just changed school, so I'm learning all of the new systems and trying not to get lost around the building at the moment.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, they say, don't they, kind of leaving schools this term is kind of the hardest bit. I joined a new school at Easter, and it's incredibly difficult, isn't it, when the school's up and running, you've got to kind of just jump in, haven't you, to get going?
Oh yeah, it is, and I've taken over a head of year role, so I've got a lot of people to try and learn, and they've just finished their options and everything, so it's quite an exciting time for them to see them just before they start GCSE.
Okay, so we're looking at the manifestos generally as a whole as we've gone through, and we do want to throw a bit of a spotlight on some of the other parties. But what are your thoughts on Bridget Phillipson there, and about kind of the focus being on child poverty rather than kind of curriculum development or any kind of big policies from Labour?
Personally, I think child poverty is a massive issue for a lot of schools. School I've moved to is in a more deprived area of my previous one, and I'm really seeing the impact on children's lives. And it's very difficult for some of these kids to be able to focus and concentrate when there's so much like chaos going on outside as well. And really, for those kids to be able to do their best at school and make the most of it, tackling poverty, it really is like one of my priorities.
Yeah, I mean, do you think it needs to be something that Labour do from the get going with it from the start? Is there anything that you wanted to see more from Labour with their manifesto?
I think a lot of it's details, isn't it? So they can say they're going to tackle child poverty, but you really need to see the details and how effective that the targeting of money towards the specific groups that need it the most is going to be. And there have been some nice, simple, some really good suggestions from lots of people that work in schools about extending pupil premium, increasing the threshold at which it's available, things like auto enrollment for free school meals. I'd like to have seen like those kind of little details, and they don't seem like much, but it means that a lot of kids that are falling through the gaps at the moment will get picked up straight away. And that's one thing I'm currently doing at the moment, is finding those kids who've fallen through the gaps, who are entitled to certain things like free school meals, and they're currently not receiving them as well. So little things like that would make my job in supporting my students a lot better.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. If we just show the slide, Hannah, about the Liberal Democrats. One of the things that they've been really focused on as they've kind of done the media rounds is around kind of mental health. Are you pleased to see that being a high priority on the manifestos around mental health and kind of supporting students, with these very complex issues?
There's like it's been an issue which has been like slowly raising up like public awareness for quite a long time now. I can remember going to like union conferences 2014 when people were first starting to identify and the increase happening, because we've seen the trajectory going up for about a decade now, haven't we? And it is really nice the seed that by these kind of ideas being put in place. It's a matter of, do we have the available expertise to deal with it? Is one of my concerns. How are we going to get all of the experts and specialists and get them accessible to everybody? Because we've lost a lot of over the last 10 years or so. We've lost a lot of very experienced professionals who've kind of left that field of work and gone elsewhere. And can we tempt them back? How long will it take to train? So it's kind of like dealing with mental health. There are short-term fits. There are little things that we can do that will make a difference. But it's kind of, we need like a big, large, systematic change, really. And I'm looking through some of the other bits of the Liberal Democrats, their family section as well. They've got some good ideas there as well, because it's about the supporting services. Because we've lost a lot of that and been left to deal with it on our own, haven't we?
Yeah, and I guess that's some of the things that me and Brent have talked about in the past, that, you know, we've often seen education just talked about in isolation and not kind of linked into, you know, society, family, and these kind of wider issues. Obviously, they're saying that they can fund this from the digital service tax. That's their kind of big thing, really. They're going to take this money from the digital service tax and put it straight in to make sure that there is a dedicated, qualified mental health professional in. This is the big thing. The big thing is every primary school and secondary school, to make sure that so they can turn to somebody whilst if they're in the need for help. But I guess that's the challenge, isn't it? Can we get the right people to the right schools? And kind of, again, how long is that going to take?
Yeah, and I think that is like with a lot of these, isn't it? It's how can they actually accomplish what they're saying? Because there's things in all of the manifesto. All of the manifestos have got something about looking after children's mental health. It's a matter of whether they can actually deliver those policies and actually that we see it on the ground. The idea of getting one person into every school is a really good idea. It's also, I think there's a lot of I feel like when you're dealing with all the agencies, a lot of they no longer connect up, is there? There's a lack of communication between various agencies. You end up having to, when you're dealing with like a particular student, you end up having to chase around, collecting up all of your different information. It feels like a lot of agencies aren't communicating or passing on that information well. So a way of kind of like improving that kind of communication would mean that less things get missed and we can intervene a lot earlier.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we looked at kind of we're going to try and give everyone a spotlight, but your thought, are you thinking that from the Conservative, Labour and Liberal Democrat side, do you actually think they get this? They understand what is happening in, you know, a comprehensive secondary school or primary school today? Do you think they actually get it?
I think there's more. I've got severe doubts that the Conservatives get it, because if they did, they wouldn't have allowed the situation that we're currently dealing with to have developed in the first place. They wouldn't have, when they were warned about some of the changes they made, they would have a negative impact. They ignored those calls and went ahead with them. So I am skeptical of them. I think with Lib Dems and Labour, I think they are listening. It's a matter of how closely they're listening. They do seem to be engaged, particularly on the issue of SEN provision. Both parties seem to be talking a lot more about it than they have in the past, and there does seem to be a little. There's more things coming out that parents of SEN children that I know feel a little bit more positive about that. That is moving up the agenda, and you are hearing a lot more about SEN on radio discussions when we talk about education. So I think there's a possibility that they've started to listen. They've identified the problem. It's a matter of how well are they going to listen to the little details to get things right.
Yeah, and we do seem to be kind of, you can really see the kind of the left and right kind of divide in some of these manifestos. We just put up the Reform UK manifesto. Front and center of theirs is this idea of the patriotic curriculum, and Ben Habib was on with Victoria Derbyshire on Newsnight trying to, you know, I mean, she really kind of held him to task on that. Why do you think they've got that right at the top of their kind of agenda? for the first 100 days of all the things we've just talked about. They're thinking the first 100 days we need to get in a patriotic curriculum into our primary and secondary schools.
It's very culture wars. It is very culture wars, and you've also got to look at a lot of the influences around the Reform Party and how close. Like, there's a lot of we know that Farage is very close to Trump and the whole MAGA campaign. And if you look at some of the policies that have been enacted in some of the US states as well, some of the stuff that, like in particular, Florida is a very good example, but there's others as well. This kind of idea of rewriting a curriculum to fit a certain narrative is being implemented in various parts of the states at the moment. And I think there's like a direct influence coming in the same way we've got the second point on there is ban transgender ideology in primary schools, secondary schools. Those are their two big points, and they're both very, very culture wars, and they're not something that I think all of us working in schools going, that's a priority issue to deal with, is this. And I do think, yeah, it's very political, and it's about attracting the market, which probably don't have a lot of them are not going to be people that are directly connected to the school system. So they're not going for people working in schools. They're probably not going for parents, because the parents I know, this isn't their concern. They're worried about resources, having specialist teachers in classrooms. The bread and butter of teaching, that is what is the main concern of parents. So they're aiming for support of right wing media, and they're aiming for other people that probably aren't having children in the education system at the moment.
Yeah, well, it's interesting on one of the policies. You said you've just become a head of year. What are your thoughts on that kind of the permanent exclusion of violent, disruptive students, and looking at the doubling up of PRUs, so kind of schools can kind of function more safely, because that has been a concern from some teachers, that they have felt that their school environment has got a little bit more violent. So is that a good policy to support teaching in schools?
Well, personally, I it's something that in my area we do need some more. We could do with a couple of very specialist PRU units to deal with certain students that aren't coping in the mainstream. And they're really good PRU units. Are if they're run well, they can have a really good turnaround. A couple of my close personal friends had a lot going on when they were teenagers, and they dropped out of mainstream education, and one of them went to a PRU unit and the other one went to a unit called CRED, and both of them are very successful and doing really well now. They've had a massive turnaround. For them, with the difficulties they were having in life, it was a safe space for them. I'm a little bit worried that some of the similar units at the moment don't have the resources or the specialism to be able to look after the students that I've currently got in my school that are struggling, and I don't feel comfortable sending them off to the current units that we've got. So the idea of having additional PRU units with best practice, it's a matter of if Reform were to have power, it'd be a matter of what their opinion of best practice looks like, because it's probably I'd worry that it wouldn't be the kind of trauma-informed approach that we need for those particular students.
Yeah, well, to be fair, I don't think Reform are actually saying they will have power. They're just going to agitate to cause the Conservatives some problems, and possibly to kind of be involved in some kind of opposition coalition. But they could be kind of pulling the strings of some kind of Conservatives, I guess, in some conservative areas. I guess that's why it's important to kind of look at them now, because they are gaining popularity in certain areas, and that they will have opportunities, I guess, to have wield some kind of power around some control in those areas. It's just interesting that you're saying there that you don't feel as a head of year that the PRUs are currently good enough for you to kind of almost, I guess what you're saying is, like, morally send a child there. Is that what you're kind of saying? Is that so you're keeping them back in the school and try and support them?
Well, there is a limit. You've always got to think about the safety of other students, haven't you? So if a student becomes too unsafe for the rest of the school population, then you have to tell them that you have to remove them from the rest of the school population. I've got some that are kind of like, not necessarily violent, because this is just focused on violence, isn't it? But there's other students that aren't violent, but this isn't the mainstream place at the moment. Mainstream education at the moment is not the right place for them to thrive. They need that more kind of specialist, those smaller kind of groups, more time teaching them their self-regulation in an environment where they can take their 10 minutes out, where they've got that kind of space to kind of like go through their emotions as well, because a lot of them they're melting pots full of emotion for all sorts of different reasons, and they're struggling to deal with that. And so if I my current places, I don't think that they've got enough. They're under resourced at the moment, and and what I also see is inconsistency of staff as well. There's a lot of staff turnover in those units near me, and what these children really need is consistency and trusted adults where they can kind of like learn as a because they're short on trust for a lot of people anyway. So they need somebody who's going to be there constantly as like a rock and support for them. And I don't think that that's available at the moment.
Okay,
I completely agree. I've got a friend who works in a PRU, and it's that hearing the stories, the names he's called, spat at, kicked at on a daily basis, and he's in primary. But it is that thing, if we've got an issue with teacher retention at the moment and we're going to incorporate loads more PRUs, how are we going to resource those? Because it takes a special type of teacher to be resilient and stick in one of those long enough to really see the results with those kids, because it's not a quick thing getting in one of those and doing it. And the same as a lot of these policies all have about new extra SRB places, because my school has an SRB that is massively kind of oversubscribed and we don't have enough spaces, and it does wonders. And my son is at an SRB and he's been there for 3 years for his speech delay, and they've done wonders as well. But we do need more of those. But then none of them are talking about kind of the funding aspect, especially the fact that funding for kids with EHCPs hasn't changed since like 2013. So all these, and we talked on the weekly review about how EHCPs are at this highest rate in 6 years, I think it is, and over half of them aren't getting their EHCPs within the statutory window. So we've got all these kids with extra needs that aren't getting the support, but where's the funding so those kids get the support, so they don't end up with these emotional needs and go down that chain and end up in that places? Like you said, it sounds like they're listening, but they're not quite picking up the whole story.
I think that's my general question is: do you think they get it? That's because all of this sounds great, but like we've talked many times before about and I know that we are going to do as a team Teachers Talk Radio build our manifesto, but I wonder if actually they at the heart of it they just no one really listened. So far we've gone through Conservatives, Labour, Liberal Democrats, and now Reform. Is there anything on there that shows a concrete understanding of what teachers need as of September when they come back after the election?
No, I don't see that clarity. There's not a clarity. They're pointing in the right direction, but I don't think they know how to. I don't think they know how to get there, and it's going to be a matter of some of them have made a good few starting steps. And they've shown that they've got it on their horizon, but they need to listen. They need to listen really carefully to their constituents, because their constituents are going to be the parents. They're going to be the teachers. They need to when you've got all of these new MPs entering Parliament, they need to then be going into their schools, talking to their head teachers. They need to be going to the different bodies and having deep discussions, and then almost from a grassroots up kind of approach. MPs talk to their constituencies, work out how to deal with it, and then bring it back to centralising the policy. But I worry that they're not going to be having those conversations.
Yeah, I mean, on Reform's manifesto, their kind of 100-day pledge, they've got two things around universities as well, which obviously a lot of our students kind of, when they leave secondary, they maybe are considering that university isn't the place for them because it's too expensive. There's two possible policies there about scrapping interest on loans and trying to get universities to do, I guess, shorter courses or fit the courses into 2 years. Would that help kind of with a bit of leveling up, so more kind of working class children could go to university?
I think particularly when it comes to things like reducing it down to a 2-year course, one of the groups that would be really helpful for is people as mature students returning, people who aren't going straight in from 18. And actually, if you're looking at a lot of your kind of people that have had from working class backgrounds, they may not consider going to university straight away at 18. When they're a few years old and they've been in the workplace for a while, then they've got that urge to return, or you're looking at single parents that would like to return to university, and that a 2-year course is going to be a lot more manageable for them to do than a 3-year course to then upskill and go elsewhere. So I think a lot of 18-year-olds as well would prefer to spend 2 years rather than 3, just for the simple finances. But actually, for your like people in their 20s or 30s or even older, it makes it, if they've also that flexibility within, let's say, online courses, because the idea of doing online course part time over 6 years for a lot of people is a big ask and is slightly off putting. But if you're doing like a half year course part time, a 4-year course is a bit more manageable as well. So there are possibilities, and adult education is something that, but we occasionally get words from the political parties, but we never see any kind of like proper details. And adult education is really important for those people that kind of like find their feet later on in life.
Yeah, I mean, Liberal Democrats, if you just, if Hannah, you don't mind just flicking back to the Liberal Democrats one, they do have 2 things on there as well about reinstate the maintenance grants for disadvantaged children immediately to make sure that living costs are not a barrier to studying at university, and to create lifelong skills grants, giving adults £5,000 to spend on education training throughout their lives. And aim to increase them to 10,000 in the future when public finances allow. Because I guess some of the students you're dealing with, Karam, who may be, school at the minute is a bit of a struggle. Maybe they could come to kind of education later on in life if it's still accessible to them.
It's actually some parents I've spoken to actually who have found themselves in that situation. Parents of students that I've taught in the past that I've had these conversations with, they've actually found themselves in that kind of situation as well. And so if you've got a way of helping the parents, then that gets the parents out of poverty and then helps their children in turn. So it's kind of like a double win.
So thank you for your time and insight tonight, Karen. Just last question: if you could add one thing to a manifesto yourself, what would it be?
Electoral reform.
Oh no,
I go for electoral reform in total. From education, I would probably looking at pupil premium, because you can I change it to pupil premium. I would increase the threshold. I would increase the amount. Because then we're targeting to the people we need, but we do need to get the threshold up quite a lot because it's too low at the moment.
And that would help with that kind of getting people out of poverty as well, and making sure they have access to education properly. It'll get rid of that.
I think it's a quick, easy thing. The mechanism's all there. You don't have to build infrastructure for it. You just tweak the rules around it, and then the money flows in straight away. So that's the quickest way of having an impact.
Brilliant. Okay, well, thank you very much for your insights, Karen. Really appreciate your time again. If you want to listen back to a show that we did, I think it was about 18 months ago with Karen Bales, it was on a kind of the just after COVID. And Karen had some really interesting insights into air conditioning and the building itself, how the building can stop kind of infection and that type of thing. So it's really interesting kind of listen back to. It'll be on the Spotify Teachers Talk Radio playlist for you to listen back to. So we're going to have a look at our sponsors now. So we'll just have a...
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Have you ever heard of teaching how-tos? Imagine having your own instructional coach available 24/7. Now it's a reality with the Teaching How-Tos platform. This highly personalised, socialised platform empowers busy teachers to learn and apply evidence-based teaching techniques, either independently, working collaboratively, or with their peers, or with their new AI assistant. The platform features over 160 visual guides to teaching techniques. Interested in finding out more? Visit teachinghowtos.com and register for their next webinar. Easy4U is where innovation meets accessibility. Their subscription-based offering not only equips schools with cutting-edge devices, but revolutionises the learning experience. By eliminating financial barriers, streamlining support, and embracing technology, Easy4U isn't just providing tools, they are shaping a future where every student can thrive, unburdened by limitations. Easy4U, transforming education, one device at a time. Find out more at www.easy4u.school. Apps for Good gives schools free introductory computing courses. The courses are for everyone, including those who aren't computing teachers, and they're fully equipped with resources mapped to the UK computing curriculums. Students will develop essential and digital skills by working in teams to create a prototype app for good. Visit www.appsforgood.org to find out more.
And thank you very much for all the support that they give the shows and the Teachers Talk Radio team. So we are going to move on to screen time, basically have a look at smartphones again. We had a show about 4 or 5 weeks ago now with Catherine Burble Singh, and at the time it was kind of, she was seen as you know, the strictest head teacher in the UK, and she had this thing about, you know, students should just not be using the phones. They should be taken off them. They should be banned. And to be honest with you, it kind of took me by a bit of surprise that we're talking about banning mobile phones. And obviously the government released a white paper on this, and some schools have carried that through and started banning it. After listening to Catherine, the way she kind of put her arguments forward, obviously, you know, she's a great orator, great speaker, and you know, she came up with some really interesting points, and kind of that story, I think, has developed and developed and developed. So if we have a look at this, the data that came out actually around when we spoke to Catherine, we can see now that 99% of children spend time online now. So I mean, it's essentially anybody. There's probably 1% of people who can't get a decent enough signal to be honest with you, to actually get on line. That's 9 in 10 children have their own mobile phone by the time they reach the age of 11. You know, which is an incredible statistic. This is really a you know, I didn't know this happened. I was kind of a bit blindsided by this. I kind of thought that children kind of had their a lot of children didn't have access. I thought the real majority would be that didn't have mobile phones. And it's really interesting, not only as a teacher, but as a parent, looking at mobile phones. And I know before the show, Hannah, you were talking about you know, your own experience with a mobile phone as well.
Yeah, I've got an ex-husband who thinks my son should have a phone, and he's only 7, and I very much am anti-phones because I know all the facts and figures around it. So he has it when he's there, but then when he comes back to me, he doesn't. So he spends majority of the week with me and doesn't have it. But certainly on the days where he comes back, if I let him watch a little bit of telly, there's like maybe tantrums when I tell him it's time to turn it off. Whereas like once he's settled back in and he's back into routine, if I tell him turn it off, he'll turn it off straight away. And I know that that's one of the things that people have said, that kind of, it feels that like addiction to kind of things like these screens, these programs, this scrolling, everything is kind of made in this way that's addictive. There's a university near me, Norwich University of the Arts. They actually have a course on kind of content design and creativity. And I can't remember the name of the course, but I remember them saying even about how they work out the correct color red that people are most likely to click on to open that notification.
Yeah.
For me, the science behind it is like, it's going to be affecting their brains in this way that they're not in control of it anymore. It is essentially like this really addictive thing. But my child is like just as happy outside. He's very much a beach boy. He'll spend hours and hours in the sea, and I know that that's where he's happiest. And it's like he needs to have that balance. Like, I do appreciate there are things that are positive about phones, but I don't think enough kids are getting that balance and having that time away from it, that switch off, that kind of real world play and connectivity, rather than this false dopamine hit that they get from scrolling through a phone.
Yeah, I mean, if you we've got some data from the FT, particularly looking at, again, mental health, and so I know this is coming from the US, but you can see from this graphic the share of US teens who only meet up with their friends once a month or less has rocketed in the last decade. And this is obviously having a major impact on mental health. There's also, Hannah, a collection of charts from the FT showing about kind of girls in particular, just to show that kind of from a gender point of view, that depression, anxiety is really soaring amongst teenagers in the UK and the US. And hopefully, kind of shortly, we'll be speaking to a paediatrician about this, Dr. Sanjeev Nichani, OBE, who is kind of he's starting to, a group is starting to kind of coalesce, been put together through this group called Safer Screens. And if we can just have a look at kind of what they're saying, I mean, some of this is, as a parent, is getting quite kind of scary now, particularly that we're actually seeing these kind of neurological impacts on children, teenagers. And and some children have ended up with debilitating conditions ranging from diabetes to sleep disorders, and kind of this incredible one that the smartphone itself is being associated with an increase in Tourette's as well. We've obviously covered mental health there. It's accelerated onwards mental health concerns and issues. The smartphone use in the US exceeded 50% of the population for the first time. And obviously, we know in the UK, we generally seem to follow US kind of social patterns. Widespread use of smartphones among children and teens has been normalised and is increasing. Ofcom report shows that 91% of children aged 11 own a mobile phone, which we just covered. Yet harms now associated with excess mobile phone use among children and young people are serious. And I think this is the kind of the really look into this week, that this is the kind of thing that's really kind of made my stomach kind of churn a little bit, is the fact that they're seen to be kind of long lasting and can therefore be life threatening. So obviously there's kind of serious concerns that we need to kind of look into. Sanjeev Nichani or Dr. Nichani has linked this kind of. He's basically saying that a play-based childhood is now moving into a phone-based childhood, and almost on cue is Dr. Nichani there.
Hello, Adam. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. Thank you very much for being on the show. I don't know if you heard the opening to this section where we talked about kind of some of the data coming through. I
did indeed, yeah. And I have to say, you both articulated it and expressed the current evidence and the concerns beautifully. I'm very impressed and really pleased. Yeah, no, I'm really pleased that actually the awareness is being raised slowly but surely, and hopefully collectively together, we will all, as a society, begin to take action. Just a few further thoughts. Given I have summed up essentially what you've described I've coined a phrase called the screendemic, which is the difficulties in development for younger children and the epidemic of mental health illness among children and young adults, secondary to excessive screen time and social media use. And this is a very, very serious problem. You talked about statistics in the US and the UK. In fact, all English-speaking countries are pretty badly affected. Girls are disproportionately affected in terms of mental health illness. However, boys are also very substantially affected. The graphs are shocking. They're horrifying. They're really, really worrying.
Yeah.
So this is
can I ask you a really blunt question?
Please, yes.
Like we talk about some other things. Are we saying now that are we going to use the word addicted here, like we would do for kind of some other substances or other things? Are we to that point where we're going to use the word addicted?
Yes, many children are. If I give you some statistics from Leicester City Council conducted a children's well-being survey 2021-22, so they're a couple of years old, therefore slightly out of date. Substantial percentage of children spend their entire evenings online. A graph from the redoubtable and extremely knowledgeable and prolific Jonathan Haidt, which I borrowed for some of my presentations, has shown that 80% of children spend 2 or more hours on non-educational screen time. In fact, the Leicester study showed 5 or 6 hours is the norm for 30-40% of children. So yes, sadly, far too many children are addicted. The problem is that the evidence that we are now seeing, which is increasing rapidly and is very potent and compelling, is not known to the public at large. So we have sleepwalked into this disaster. In the last 15 years, civilization as we know it has been upended. I'm now seeing children walking to my clinic normally with normal locomotion coordination, and they are nonverbal. And you delve into why that might be the case. They're spending most of their waking time in front of a screen. No, we all learn language by hearing vocabulary, interacting with others, family, friends, etc. And that is not happening because they're spending the entire time in front of a screen with these flashing images. And that is a real problem. The other end of the spectrum, teenagers, as you already alluded to, and young children are having lots and lots of anxiety and depression. The focus currently is mainly on the teenagers, and I think we actually need to focus from early childhood onwards, because the ramifications of too much time is affecting early development, communication difficulties, motor difficulties, things like not directly linked, but because they're spending so much time in front of a screen, their posture is affected, and also basics like toilet training is not being taught at home. So it's a very, very big problem.
Yeah, we said we've kind of sleptwalked into it. Do you think in some ways we actually kind of accelerated it? Because during COVID, I was guilty. I was sending work home, and I was almost encouraging the use of a mobile phone at home for education. Do you think we kind of made a mistake there with kind of the work online, the teams teaching, and then children basically then just got kind of sucked, really pulled into, the mobile phone as a device, and it's been really difficult to kind of shift from that point? Or was this a trend that was happening anyway?
I don't think it was a mistake. I think we were forced into it for major health reasons, health events. But it has therefore become entrenched behavior. And sadly, what is happening, a lot of commentators are still blaming COVID for all of this. And many of us are thinking, like the health professionals for safer screens are now trying to to highlight the fact that, COVID, fortunately, is in the past. It's yet not in the distant past, but it's in the past. And we must stop blaming COVID for all of this. It started there, but now it is carried on because it became the norm. However, we now are seeing this, and we need to therefore educate, alert, nudge, and advise parents that actually this is the emerging evidence we are seeing, and practices need to change at home from birth onwards.
Yeah. Do you think, therefore, that schools should take a harder line and just say no mobile phones?
I am personally of that view, and I'll give you the reason for that, because as we've already discussed and you've alluded to, many children are addicted, which means they have 24/7 access to their phones. To me, the first way of trying to tackle that, to deal with that, is to reduce the 24/7 access they have. And the most obvious place to start is the school day. 8 to 4, they don't have instant access to the phone. And Hannah articulated beautifully the addictive algorithms, the dopamine rush that they constantly get, that stops during the school day. And that's the first step into trying to reduce the amount of time children are spending. Other European countries like France, Spain, Netherlands have banned phones in school. The United Nations has recommended this. And I certainly think this is what we should do as a first step. It must be a ban which is very, very clear. And that's one of the ways we can begin to tackle this screendemic.
Yeah, and I mean, Hannah were talking before the show where we both kind of delivered subjects like photography, creative eye media, these things that kind of use the mobile phone within the education setting. So, if Hannah, you want to share your story about kind of photography and using it kind of in the classroom.
I certainly think there's obviously weird, like the exception to the rule, aren't there, where there's a place kind of to be using it properly. But I think, again, it is if they can use it properly. I would rather majority of the time that they use the camera, but then if we are doing specific things, then their phone will work. But I guess for me, it's very much putting it into certain modes. So I will put them in flight mode so they can't get onto anything else, because it's that addictive nature that they feel this need that they can't pick up a phone and not check their messages. And it was getting them out of that habit to do it was quite difficult. And to be fair, my previous school really they didn't try to ban phones, but they tried to make sure that kids didn't have their phones on. Because I think I don't know whether we're stuck back into the 90s, that fear of kind of kids getting taken when they're walking home, that they need a phone to be able to contact home when they're walking to and from home. But I don't think that that's necessary. There's a lot of street cameras. Like, we generally know our kids are safe. If anything, they're more likely to be attacked if they've got their phone out walking up and down. But we would have it that period 1 teachers would make them get their phones out and turn them off and tap their screens to make sure we were aware that they were off, and then they had to put them in their bags. And then they were meant to stay in their bags. But I was a tutor, and we had tutor time in the middle of the day. So I'd make them all get them out and show me that they were still off, and suddenly they're coming out of pockets and blazer pockets and they're not where they should be. But again, for my lessons, obviously they were allowed them out and we could use them, but they had to make sure they were in that flight mode. And at the end, they'd show me they'd turn them off and put them back away. But it's really difficult for them to break those habits. And I think smartwatches was also like almost more triggering, because they had them on their wrists and they could see when their friends messaged them during lessons. And I think banning those was really useful, because suddenly they're not having those communications, but they're much harder to see because they just look like a watch, unless you're really kind of checking under their blazers. Let's face it, they all buy longer ones. They last a few years. They're harder to see, but it's one of those, it's using technology for the right purpose. To also I try and explain to my tutor group, I've got year 10s, and it's trying to explain to them the mental health barriers of being on your phone and how it affects your mental health. But also, like, if you're going to use it, do it for good. Like, really audit who you're following and who you're looking at and who you're watching. Be conscious of it. Go through and delete people that are making you feel negative, and have like a little cleanse, and trying to build into, I don't know, because I almost feel like it's cold turkey. Like, they can't kind of quit technology altogether. How would you kind of suggest like weaning them off it almost? Or do you think cold turkey is the best option for mobile phones?
No, absolutely not. So that's a really good question. I just wanted to quickly say the organization for which you're very familiar with, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, conducts the PISA assessments every 3 years, which I'm sure you know about, across 80 countries. They reported in December 2023. And one of the things they said, which is relevant to, you're talking about flight modes, etc., in the class, is that mobile phones not only distract the person in the class, but children around the phone, around the person with the phone. So, you briefly, the child will take the phone off the flight mode. There's a rush of messages that will give them the dopamine release. And again, that sort of thing has been shown to reduce their ability to concentrate during the rest of the day. So, answering your question directly, I've created what I call a 5-a-day infographic based on 5 fruit and veg a day. And that caters to different age groups from 0 to 17. And I can go through it with you quickly if you like. So,
Please.
For the ages of 0 to 5, I say point number 1, between 0 and 2 years, there should be no screen time apart from video chatting. Between 2 and 5, the screen should not be more than 30 minutes, preferably educational content. If you must give your child a screen, point number 3, if you must give a child a screen, give a child a bigger screen, because mobile phones are known to cause visual stress for young children. And you talk to opticians, they'll tell you they're seeing lots and lots of children with needing glasses. Point number 4, and I'm using my language quite carefully, particularly when I talk to parents. Try your best not to use a digital device to settle your child. There are instances where you have to, and we live in the real world, we understand that. However, the screen is not a de facto babysitter. And point number 5 is a concept which is relevant to all of us, and that is sleep hygiene. For the ages of 0 to 5, for at least 2 hours before bedtime, there should be no screens. There should be a routine, bathing, stories, etc., etc. So that's 0 to 5, 5 a day. So what about 6 to 11? Point number 1, do not reach for a phone when you wake up first in the morning. The dopamine rush that you get, studies are showing that the dopamine rush children get first thing in the morning reduces their ability to concentrate during the rest of the school day, which are also relevant to children turning their flight mode on and off and looking at messages. This dopamine rush is really toxic. Dopamine, let the level elevates, it keeps depleting, you keep reaching for your phone, which is why Meta is being sued by 42 American states, because they're alleging that they have created these addictive algorithms, which we know to be the case. Point number 2, screen time. I recommend a limit of 1 to 2 hours of non-educational screen time or recreational screen time during weekdays, and 2 hours on weekends. Point number 3, physical activity, half an hour to 1 hour a day at least. Point number 4, family time, there should be no screens. When you're out, there should be no screens. And this goes to the question of weaning off. When you're out, there should be no screens. When children are in the car, there should be no screens. When you're having a meal or the family having dinner, there should be no screens. And point number 5, again, sleep hygiene. So 1 hour before bedtime, screens should be put away.
Okay. Are you saying there's a clear difference kind of between the mobile phone and I guess a tablet than a TV, for example?
Yes.
Is a clear difference there? Can you just make it clear kind of what the difference is there? Because I think maybe a lot of people listen to this going, well, I've got young children, but all they're really watching is kind of Peppa Pig. So how is that different to watching Peppa Pig on the large screen TV rather than the mobile phone? Is there a clear difference between the two?
If they're watching Peppa Pig for a finite time, as per my suggestions, which are based on WHO recommendations, NICE recommendations, American Pediatric Association and Psychiatric Association, and my own sort of clinical common sense and acumen, as long as the parameters are maintained, i.e. a limited amount of recreational screen time, it doesn't really matter if it's half an hour on a tablet or on a TV. And sometimes this can be blurred, but of course, then in older children, the screen, usually the mobile phone, possibly the tablet, then gets used for all the various poisonous, toxic apps, the TikTok, the Instagram. And if we have some time, I'll tell you about the difference between TikTok in the rest of the world and TikTok in China. And it is that what, of course, you can get that, but you don't usually use much of that on a television. You can currently with apps these days, but it's the smaller screens that the children use, and they then get addicted to. They're constantly on these smaller screens. So it's not about television at all. It's about the social media apps and screens that they're using.
So it's that constant kind of feed in all the time, that kind of constant kind of buzzing. I mean, it's basic. It's behaviorism, isn't it? In its kind of rawest form, isn't it? Just the reward system, just being triggered, kind of, constantly. You kind of after that, like we talk about, kind of, alcohol or addictive substances. Do we need to kind of move? Here's a question: do you think we need to move it away from education a little bit more and back into kind of public health? Because obviously all the talk is in education, banning mobile phones.
Yeah, well, it has to be a systemic and a societal change and a multi-pronged approach. So education has to be involved. I'm currently negotiating with public health. No question. Public health needs to be involved. Medics need to be involved, because ultimately the parents and families will listen to a number of different opinions. While education is highly respected, so is the medical profession. And I think everybody needs to come together and disseminate this message uniformly. So it is not just education by any means. It has to be, the government has a role to play, but the government can't tell you what to do at home. And therefore, I think medical professionals like myself and the public health bodies, the integrated care boards, etc., have a huge role to play on this.
Well, I mean, obviously, the elections happened. The election was called just as the Department of Education were really getting into this mobile phone issue. Do you think it's something that needs to be right on the agenda from day one of whoever's in charge on the 4th of July?
Without a shadow of a doubt, every extra day that we lose, given how slowly policies take to formulate, to be rolled out, how slowly bureaucracy works, it needs to be one of the top societal priorities, one of the top governmental priorities. The Online Safety Act, sadly, in my opinion, is totally ineffective. It's really not going to make any difference to the problems we are talking about. Yes, online bullying, etc., is a serious problem, but it's not going to address the bread and butter, the nitty-gritty of delayed development at a younger age and the epidemic of mental health illness in children and young people. So this needs to be top of the agenda. The Educational Select Committee has put out a really good report, and I hope the new government will take this very, very seriously ASAP.
Brilliant. Well, I really thank you for your time. I know you're incredibly busy. In fact, I think you just flown back today or yesterday or something to
yeah, I flew back from a charity trip in India.
Yeah, brilliant. And the work that you do kind of around the world is phenomenal as well. I know you've got kind of you've got your Hearts, is it Heart Foundation or
it's the Healing Little Hearts Global Foundation? Yes.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so we really appreciate your time to kind of go through that with us tonight. And and hopefully we can get you back on. Hopefully, if there's a new policy and a new drive forward for this. But very sobering thoughts tonight. And thank you very much, Dr. Nichani, for your time. We really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for asking me. It'll be a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Whew. That was so very sobering, and we didn't get through the story about the teenagers who actually.
Yeah, I was like, we can sneak it in. We've got one more minute. Is this the answer? I found it really interesting. So I think BBC, is it Stafford or somewhere, covered it. Salford, sorry, and they got 10 teenagers to swap their smartphone for a good old-fashioned like block phone or brick phone. I think I love the fact a load of them went and got diamonds and jazzled them up because they were not such an eyesore. But like this is what I associate with my childhood, having one of those phones, and I thought I was really tech and like modern, but actually it's this kind of backwards bit that they've I think that's the bit that the doctor was saying about how the social media apps is where it really ramps up and really starts affecting them. And here they can still message, they can message home and things like that, but they don't have access to those apps. And it was, if anybody's watching got time to go watch some of the clips on BBC, but some of them talk about how actually I found myself coming down and sitting and talking to my family. One of them said that she went and spoke to her grandparents more and actually asked to go visit them more and spent more time with their grandparents, because actually she realized she quite enjoyed it when she switched off from her phone and actually was present in the situation. Also, as the art teacher, I love the fact that people found peace and found their creativity and started painting and drawing again. And I think it is that, like, do we need to, like, I think once the kids can see the benefit, it will be better. But it's that fear of missing out, isn't it? I don't know.
Yeah, FOMO's a big thing with the phones, yeah.
But I had a year 10 student actually in my year this year at my previous school who had a brick phone. This is what his parents gave him. They went, if you want a phone, you can have one of these. And people took the mickey out of him, but he was so focused out of school. He trained and was on like some football team for the local, like one of the younger teams. He'd been signed there. He was a motocross into that, and he'd got signed by Red Bull and got flown out to Dubai to compete and was flying out to all these different places. And I'm like, oh my gosh, your social media, if you had all the photos of what you're doing, everybody would be like, you'd be the most popular kid in the school, but actually had a brick phone and everyone like didn't have as much friends because they didn't know he did all this. And it was quite often me telling the others, like, do you know that he does that like at the weekends, or that's what he did in the holidays? And then people would like have those discussions with him because he was so humble with it and didn't tell anybody. And I just think it's like, I don't know, is it that we need, it's time to turn the clock back, like you said, and kind of go backwards to kind of untick it? And is it that us teachers, do we need to ban them completely? Because was it Catherine who was on yours? I think I saw her. She said that she has brick phones at her school. That if parents,
she gives them out, because obviously it kind of stops that conversation about, oh, my child's not going to be safe. No worries, here's a phone.
Yeah, they're less likely to get mugged for this.
Yeah, it kind of does the job, but looking back now, it's like a horrible feeling of kind of guilt. Really, it's got, I've been in these kind of media subjects, IT subjects, computer science subjects in the past, where I've definitely been an advocate of, oh, well, let's do a Kahoot on your phones now and get the phones out as a bit of a kind of way to engage. Now I'm looking back thinking, was that all a bit of a mistake, or was it that things have just kind of escalated since COVID? I mean, one of the things that we've tied in a few times here, which it'd be interesting to see if you get kind of these connectives with poverty, because we've discussed before that possibly that some of this mobile phone use has arisen because of families barely breaking even and having to do 2, 3, 4 jobs, and actually unfortunately the hit there is again with the poorest families, because the children basically have to be at home, and if you've got to get to sleep quickly, you've got to you find a solution. And if the phone is working as a parent, because of everything else going on, maybe you just go with it, and that's just the kind of the hit. And I'm sure that any parent listening to Dr. Nichani would would not want that to happen. But those. This cost of living crisis, the poverty in the UK at the minute is very high in a lot of working families. So we're not blaming parents here at all, are we? We're just saying, sometimes that might be the hit, but it's a massively complicated issue that I just wanted to highlight. And we thank a doctor. If you go onto his website, you'll be blown away by the work that he does all around the world. He really is a complete superhero. So literally saving lives as well as the work that he's done with the mobile phones. So should we just say a quick thank you to our sponsors tonight, and as always we say thank you to John Catt Educational, and you can visit johncattbookshop.com. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Thank you, John, for your support. Teaching how-tos, teachinghowtos.com. Use the platform, features over 160 visual evidence-based guides to teaching techniques. Register for the next webinar. That's teaching hows to. Apps for you, www.appsforgood.org. Free introductory computer courses for everybody, mapped to the UK computing curriculums, which is fantastic. That's a really difficult subject to teach, so it's good to get resource from there. And also Easy for You. You can visit www.easyforyou.school. Embrace technology and equip your schools with cutting edge devices to revolutionize learning. And if you want to be a host on Teachers Talk Radio, you can use the QR code. Again, we always say this at this point after these shows that we encourage people to get their mobile phones out to scan the QR code, and host your very own show on Teachers Talk Radio. So you can go and have a look at what we do and how to kind of be a host on Teachers Talk Radio. If you want to listen back to previous Education Tonight shows, you can also find them on YouTube. You can put yourself a little Education Tonight playlist if you want, but you can access the range of material that we've got there. And we've also got a host of in the past we've done kind of podcasts and that type of thing, but every day there's something to listen to and something to provide you with some CPD. I know that I wanted to listen to, I didn't quite get it this week, but didn't find the time to, but I want to listen back to Tom Rogers's AI show that was earlier on in the week. But there's always something wherever you are in education. There's something to look at. Next week we'll be live from 8 o'clock again, and we'll be looking at the manifestos, but they have quite a different look at them and look at the kind of mental health as a kind of as what is going on in terms of manifestos and mental health. I think it's again the longest show, Hannah, so we better call it time at some point. But thank you very much for your input and support tonight, driving everything behind the scene. I really appreciate your help with Education Tonight. I don't think we'll see you next week. Is that right? We've got Paul.
You've got super sub Paul's in tomorrow. Next week.
We'll be like that, ref. Super sub. So it'll be me and Paul Hazard to run things next week. Thank you very much for your time. Summer solstice, so go out. You've got about another hour or so of daylight to go. If you can get down to Stonehenge before they get painted, that'd be great. And you can enjoy the last bits of this is it now, isn't it? It goes kind of downhill from this point onwards. But enjoy the weather and the weekend, and try and recover from that dismal England performance. If anyone watched it before the program tonight. Anyway, I need to stop talking. Have a good evening. Good night.
Good night.